So this article comes from IGN. Alex Osborne is writing about Square Enix aims to create a title that surpasses the original Final Fantasy VII with its upcoming remake for the PS4. And I personally have a really hard time when people start talking about the Final Fantasy VII remake because it has been a thing that has been happening for such a long time. So every time I talk about it, like my hopes, they go up, and then it doesn't happen for a couple of years, so it goes back down. So, oh yeah, there we go. So originally the remake was planned to be released in multiple parts, which I guess kind of makes sense. But they haven't really figured out if that's still part of like Square Enix's plan for the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that was complaining about that at first, but then I was like, if we waited for the full game, Final Fantasy 15, which was originally Final Fantasy Versus 13, took like 10 years to come out.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I can just wait 3 years and get part 1 of the game, I would much rather do that than waiting 10 years to get the full game. Because if they do it as it's releasing in 3 separate parts, the original game was on 3 separate discs. So they could release the first disc as the first game, the second disc as part 2, and the third disc as part 3. And I would be completely happy with that. It would make sense for like the way that the games themselves were parted out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like with Breath of the Wild. It's like, would you have wanted, or not Breath of the Wild, sorry, Final Fantasy X. Like, if it, waiting for the full game, if that means waiting 10 years before I can play it, when, like, who knows if I'll even be alive in 10 years. Like, you know, getting dark on the podcast. But yeah, that's the stuff that I think about, is like, I would much rather wait and play like half of the game in a few years as opposed to waiting an entire decade to when I'll be like going on, like I'll be a few years away from like being 40 years old. And then it's like right now everybody's hope is to play Final Fantasy VII HD on their PlayStation 4s and their Xbox Ones. Realistically, it's probably going to be a launch title for the PlayStation 5. But if we had to wait until the full game was finished, it would probably be a launch title on the PlayStation 6.
Yeah, and actually looking at this article, it talks about how they were seeking level planners to increase its quality another step higher. So that kind of, like, they had basically put out a posting urgently seeking additional talent. So to me, that's kind of like, where are you right now? What are your real plans? Well, have you guys not been working on it? However, like,
they forgot to develop the game.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we can make this game.
Well, the funny part was, whenever they announced the game, the director was the director for Final Fantasy 15. And in an interview later on, he said that he found out that he was the director for the game when everyone else did. So the first trailer that they showed off with the first gameplay and stuff, he had nothing to do with that, even though he was the official director for the game. He didn't know that he was going to be working on the project until his name popped up on the screen, and then it was a surprise to him. So that shows either Square was keeping it a super, super secret to where, like, the director of the game didn't even know he was working on it.
Or they're very unorganized.
Yeah. Which I would say unorganized, because like with Final Fantasy 15, it was delayed forever, and then they had an official release date reveal where they it was an entire press conference just for Final Fantasy 15. They like showed off the anime they were working on, they showed off the anime movie they were working on, they showed off more of the gameplay. They ended it, I believe they ended it with the official release date. So like the whole thing was tied around them revealing the release date. The release date was leaked like a few hours before the event started. So while it was counting down to the big reveal, everyone already knew what it was. So like that's how bad of like organizing that was. And then the entire event that was planned around this release date, the release date ended up being delayed again.
Yeah.
After they had the huge event for the thing. So it's like, yeah, it's just a huge mess. And now we had a news story a while back, a few weeks ago, where the director of the game, who was the director of Final Fantasy 15, is now, he has his own studio, Luminous Studios. So it's like, is he still the director of Final Fantasy 7, or has he moved on to the new project with his new studio where he's like starting over from scratch? But the good thing about this is they said they were going to be using Unreal Engine 4 for Final Fantasy 7 because it would allow them to produce the game a lot faster than using their own engine that they used in Final Fantasy 15. So if they chose the engine so they could work on the game easier, then I guess like that's a good thing for people to work on.
Yeah.
But I remember there was an interview where they were asked about, are you ever going to make a Final Fantasy 7 remake? Because at this time they had made the Final Fantasy 10 remake and stuff. And they said they would not release a Final Fantasy 7 remake. Like, they said they knew that it would make money and stuff, but they didn't want to make a remake of Final Fantasy 7 until they made a new Final Fantasy game that was generally thought of as better than Final Fantasy 7. So they wanted to make one...
trying to raise the expectations even higher for Final Fantasy 7? That's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah. Well, it was like...
Yes.
Because what it was, like, Final Fantasy 13 at the time was the newest game whenever the interview took place. And Final Fantasy 13 had very, very mixed reviews. A lot of people hated it and a lot of people liked it. But Final Fantasy 7, most people generally liked it. And the director was basically just saying until they made another Final Fantasy game that was without a doubt better than any of the other Final Fantasy games that they made, including 7, then they wouldn't remake 7 because they didn't want to feel like they were just going back to remake something just to get like a quick cash grab. So
it's the cash grab we want.
Yeah. Well, it's like Nintendo and Ocarina of Time HD. It's like it's the one remake
That's
everybody
the cash grab
wants.
we didn't ask for, but we loved anyways.
Well, that was the 3D version. I'm saying like if they made an HD.
We want HD.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like it would be a quick cash grab, but like everybody would still buy it. Is the thing. It's like people want it. Anyways, are you a big Final Fantasy fan, Daniel?
Well, as much as you and Holly shamed me last time for talking about it, I haven't played a whole lot of Final Fantasy. 7 being the only one I've actually played. So I mean, I would like to see the remake kind of come to fruition. There's a lot of stuff that I just okay. So the thing is though is that with RPGs, I just want them to like they changed a lot of stuff. It seems very real time action and stuff. So I don't know how well that would translate to like the turn-based action of the original game. I don't know. Obviously, if they're taking this long, they're not rushing the product. So, as much as it pains people, I have faith in their intentions to just make the game good by constantly not rushing it out. You know what I mean? So that's I don't know, but. Well, I'll be patient. So,
like at this point, seeing where Final Fantasy is at, especially like graphics wise, like I don't mind. Like Final Fantasy 7 is going to look great.
Yeah.
So you know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna forget about this remake ever happening, and then it's finally gonna happen, and I'll be like,
yeah,
I've waited so long.
Yeah. Like when the original gameplay was shown off, it was for the base PlayStation 4, or at least that's what it was designed to be for. But now there is the PlayStation 4 Pro, which makes games look even better, but I think this game isn't even going, like part 1 isn't going to release until like PlayStation 5 is about to come out. So if it ends up being a launch title for the PlayStation 5, then it could end up looking even better than it already is. And like the gameplay itself looks good because it looks like very similar to the style from Final Fantasy 15, which a lot of people liked. So the game, like, we know the story is going to be good because it has the original story. The gameplay looks like it's going to be good. So the game overall is going to be at least good, I imagine. Because it would take a lot to screw this up. Like, they already have the story, which is good. The gameplay is looking good, and the graphics look good. So
Yeah.
for this to come out and be bad, they would they would have to try and make this a bad game.
Yeah.
I would imagine. So,
But yeah, what's nice is that like Final Fantasy VII is a very story-driven game, and it'll be cool to see those story elements kind of brought to life in a way that it will age better than the original PS1 game. I don't know. That's more exciting to me than like any of the gameplay changes. It's just seeing all those, you know, the cutscenes and the story moments just kind of updated like that. Especially my main man, my BFF Barrett, like looks way cooler.
Yep.
So yeah, that's my thought. That's,
This also makes me wonder, do you think there would be a possibility of this coming to the Switch? Since, you know, Cloud popped up in Smash Brothers?
That's a good point.
And then, like, Square... okay, so I mentioned that Square was making Final Fantasy VII in Unreal Engine 4, so it would be easier to work on and develop for in case they ran into like bugs or other issues. So the interesting thing is with Final Fantasy 15, when they had an interview and they were talking about the possibility of it coming to the Switch, they said they were working with Nintendo and Epic Games. Epic Games is the people that create the Unreal Engine. And they said that they thought it would be easier if they were to do a port for the Switch to completely change the engine from the Luminous engine to Unreal Engine. So they could get Final Fantasy 15 hopefully running on the Switch easier. With this being designed from the ground up with Unreal Engine, there is a higher possibility of this being on the Nintendo Switch as opposed to Final Fantasy 15. Because now the Switch is already out. It's being designed in the engine they know can run on the Switch. So it's not like they are designing it for something that they have no idea about. Which was, you know, when Final Fantasy 15 started 10 years ago, the Wii U wasn't even announced yet. So that was 2 generations ago. Like, Wii was Nintendo's big console. And then while 15 was in development, they had the Wii U and now the Switch. And it finally releases when the Switch is popular or whatever. So it would take a lot to completely change that to work on something that they had no plans on originally working with. But with Final Fantasy VII Remake, they're developing it alongside the Switch, which is like gaining its success and popularity and stuff. So if there was like a 30% chance of Final Fantasy 15 coming to the Switch, I would say there's like a 75% chance of 7, because it's already in the engine that they were wanting to convert Final Fantasy 15 to, so it could be on the Switch, and they already know the Switch is a success. So it's something they could already be planning out, which could be yet another reason why they want to wait and like release the game into 3 parts as opposed to waiting the entire 10 years. Because if they're making it for all the different consoles, then like that would take longer. Like Breath of the Wild was delayed for so many months because they had to port it to the Switch. Anyways, I'm ranting. You guys get the point. Do you think Final Fantasy VII HD coming to the Switch or not?
I would like that.
I think there'd be a good chance. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm in support.
Alright. I guess that covers all of the news. We can do the topics of discussion and then do a few questions.
Woo! Woo!
Alright. I will do a new intro for the topic of discussion, and then a new intro for the mailbag. Everybody in the chat, get your questions ready, but don't post them until the mailbag actually starts. All right, now we're going to do the topic of discussion. So you guys ready?
We're ready.
All right.